Welcome to the deep dive. Usually medical diagnostics are, well, they're pretty clean and binary.
Right, like looking at an X-ray or something.
Exactly. Like you break your arm, the machine shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, yep, there it is.
Yeah, very straightforward.
But today, we're looking at something that is just incredibly dense. We've got this fascinating press release from EON AI Ventures, and it really proves that diagnosing a multi-billion-dollar oil refinery is, well, it's a massive, murky standoff.
Oh, for sure. It's a standoff between what AI can do and this intense corporate paranoia.
Right. And so we're looking at this brand new framework they've just published. It's called the Industry Data Rights Standard.
Which is quite a title.
It really is. And the mission for our deep dive today is to explore how this standard is attempting to solve a really massive data hoarding problem in the industrial AI space.
Because it's all about balance, balancing the life-saving potential of artificial intelligence with the very real, very intense security needs of these industrial companies.
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this because industrial companies, they desperately want the benefits of AI, right?
Oh, absolutely. They want the efficiency, the safety.
But the data that feeds that AI, it's generated by people doing incredibly dangerous, highly skilled work. I mean, we're talking about technicians isolating high voltage equipment or, engineers diagnosing catastrophic failures.
And that data is incredibly sensitive.
Exactly. It reveals exactly how a facility runs, what their costs are, and literally every single operational vulnerability they have.
Yeah, I mean, it is the ultimate double-edged sword for these operators. If we connect this to the bigger picture, AI fundamentally relies on massive data sets to learn.
Right. The algorithm needs food.
Exactly. A machine learning model is only as good as the volume of real-world examples you feed it. But when the data is as sensitive as, say, the specific failure modes of a proprietary valve in a chemical plant.
Which is basically the company's secret sauce.
Right. When it's that sensitive, companies default to the safest option. They lock it away, they build a moat around their data.
And as a result, the AI just kind of starves.
It starves. The industry as a whole stagnates because nobody is sharing what they learn. So EON is proposing a really radical framework to unblock this exact gridlock.
And it really requires a complete rethink of how we handle enterprise data, doesn't it?
It does. It changes everything.
So before we get into the actual software mechanics of, how they are physically unblocking that gridlock, we have to look at the philosophical shift EON is introducing here.
Because it completely changes the premise of who owns what in the AI age.
Right. What's the big idea here?
Well, they've anchored this entire standard on one central governing principle. It's elegantly simple, honestly. It's just a single sentence in the release.
Lay it on me.
Quote, "The customer keeps the story, EON keeps the pattern." End quote.
Wow. The customer keeps the story, EON keeps the pattern.
Yeah.
That is a phenomenal piece of phrasing.
It really sticks with you.
It does. And to picture how that actually works for you listening, think about it like giving an AI the overarching recipe for how baking works.
Okay, I like this. The pattern of baking.
Right. You give it the pattern
But
without ever handing over your specific bakery's daily sales numbers or your secret ingredient list or your employee names. The AI learns the physics of a mistake without you handing over the keys to the safe.
That analogy gets right to the heart of it, honestly. It's about separating the mechanics from the identity.
Yeah.
And to reinforce how serious EON is about this, Dan Lajerskar, he's the founder and chairman of EON AI Ventures.
Yeah.
He put it very bluntly in this release.
What did he say?
He said, and I quote, "Data rights are not a negotiation, they are a foundation."
A foundation. That's a strong word choice.
It is. And it points out how aggressively this flips the traditional Silicon Valley model completely on its head.
Because the usual approach is what? Just grab everything.
Pretty much. The prevailing approach in tech right now is aggressive extraction. The default agreement is, you hand over all your raw data, the provider trains their massive underlying models on it, and you just get a convenient dashboard in return.
Yeah, it's the giant vacuum cleaner approach. Like, give us everything and we will make sense of it for you.
Exactly.
Which, that works fine for a social media app, right? Or maybe a consumer chatbot.
Sure.
But if you are running a deep underground mine or an aerospace manufacturing plant, handing over your raw operational data to a third-party server
is a complete non-starter. They just won't do it.
Right. So EON is saying, what? Keep it.
Precisely. They are saying, keep your raw data. We do not want it.
Wow.
Instead of vacuuming up everything, they're asking for something much narrower, but ultimately, far more valuable. They are asking for the right to learn how things fail.
just the how.
Right. They want the right to learn that a certain class of equipment fails in a certain way under certain conditions.
So they can take that isolated pattern and hand it to every other worker in the world who might be standing in front of that exact same machine.
Nice.
It's about extracting the wisdom without extracting the identity. But, you can't just politely ask an algorithm to close its eyes to the sensitive bits. Data is messy.
Very messy.
So let's map out the architecture. Because keeping the story is a really nice slogan, but how is that physically coded into the software?
Well, it is operationalized through a very rigid 3-tier data architecture.
3 tiers. Okay.
Yeah, it's a hard-coded hierarchy of ownership and access that basically acts as the engine for the whole standard. You really have to start at the absolute ground floor, which they call customer data.
Okay, so this is the raw capture. We are talking about raw video feeds, sensor streams, telemetry, personnel records, site identifiers, asset IDs.
Equipment configurations, yeah, all of it.
Basically, the unfiltered, chaotic reality of a customer's day-to-day operation.
Exactly. And the critical governance rule for this first tier is that it is entirely customer-owned. It never leaves the customer's secure tenant.
Wait, never.
Never. The standard explicitly states that this raw data is never licensed to EON for any purpose whatsoever. And that explicitly includes model training.
Wow. Okay, so EON cannot use a raw video feed of a technician turning a wrench to train their base models.
Correct. They cannot touch it.
Okay, so then you move up to the second tier. They call this one Derived Insights.
Right.
And this is the analysis that is specific to a customer's sites or their specific crews or assets. It's localized intelligence.
Yeah, so for example, if a report is generated saying, crew A is 20% slower at replacing this specific high-pressure valve than crew B.
Okay, I get that. And that derived insight is also fully owned by the customer.
Fully owned. EON doesn't touch it either.
So where does EON actually come in?
That happens in the third and final tier. This is where the industry-wide value is actually created. They call it Generalized Learnings.
Generalized Learnings.
Yeah, these are the de-identified, completely non-attributable patterns. We're talking about equipment failure modes categorized by class, or taxonomies of human error, or just broad patterns of procedural deviation.
And this third tier is what EON actually owns.
Yes, but, and this is key, their ownership is strictly limited in scope to 3 very specific objectives.
Which are?
Safeguarding personnel, improving equipment reliability, and enhancing workforce competency.
Okay, wait. I have to push back here because this feels like a mechanical paradox to me.
How so?
If EON isn't training their models on the raw Tier 1 customer data at all, how does the AI actually get smart enough to spot these generalized patterns in Tier 3?
That is the big question, yeah.
Right. If the vacuum cleaner is unplugged at the source, how is the AI learning anything about how a technician makes a mistake?
It's a great question, and it really is the crux of the whole system's integrity. We have to look at the mechanics of the software itself. The AI isn't learning by absorbing a raw 4K video feed of a technician making a mistake. It relies heavily on localized sandboxed processing.
What does that mean in plain English?
It means the customer's own secure environment translates that video feed into a structured, text-based telemetry log before the central EON AI ever even sees it.
Oh, I see. So the raw visual data is being scrubbed and abstracted at the edge on the customer's own hardware.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine a complex isolation procedure on a pipeline.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The local system observes the sequence of actions. It logs that step 1 is completed, step 2 is completed, but at step 3, a specific valve is torqued to 40 psi instead of 60.
Which is a mistake.
Right, and that results in a pressure deviation. The local sandbox abstracts that physical event into just a mathematical sequence.
So it strips away all the context.
Exactly. EON's centralized AI doesn't need to know the technician's name, or the facility's GPS coordinates, or the proprietary flow rate of that pipeline.
And it just receives the abstracted metadata.
Right. It just gets a log that says when valve type X is under torqued by 20 psi at this stage in a sequence, a blowout occurs.
Wow. Okay, I see. It's learning the physics and the mathematics of the mistake.
Exactly.
By only capturing the abstracted sequence, it keeps the AI focused strictly on safety and reliability mechanics rather than corporate surveillance.
Which is exactly what these companies want.
But, if I'm the CEO of a massive chemical manufacturer, I am inherently paranoid. Even with a brilliant 3-tier architecture and this edge computing stuff, I'm worried about leaks.
Of course you are.
If I share this data, my competitors might figure out my failure rates. So how does EON guarantee that highly sensitive market-moving data doesn't accidentally slip into one of these generalized patterns?
Well, you can't ask heavy industry to just take a leap of faith on a press release.
No, definitely not.
That's why EON baked 4 verifiable enforcement mechanisms into the standard.
Okay, let's go through them.
These aren't just guidelines, by the way. They are hard-coded safeguards. And the first one directly addresses that fear of a competitor reverse engineering a process.
Right.
It's called the multi-source threshold.
Meaning a pattern cannot enter that generalized tier 3 layer if it only comes from a single source, right?
Right. It has to be mathematically observed at 2 or more entirely unaffiliated organizations before it becomes a recognized learning.
Oh, okay. Which just eliminates the possibility of exposing a single company's proprietary process.
Exactly. If the pattern requires 2 entirely separate corporate entities to experience it independently, well, it's an industry problem now, not a trade secret.
Okay, requiring 2 unaffiliated companies makes a lot of sense to protect unique trade secrets. But what about market-moving financial data?
Yeah, that's another big fear.
If 2 separate chemical plants leak their production volumes to an AI, that is still a complete disaster for commodities markets. Or if 2 different companies accidentally upload their vendor pricing, I mean, that's a massive antitrust issue.
Oh, massive.
So how does the standard stop that?
That leads directly to the second safeguard, which is categorical exclusion.
Categorical exclusion, meaning some stuff is just banned.
It is a hard-coded ban on certain types of data ever being processed for generalized learnings.
Like what?
We're talking production volumes, unit costs, yields, chemical formulations, reservoir data, turnaround schedules, capital plans, and vendor terms.
So pretty much all the business secrets.
All of them. And the text of the standard is very explicit here. These are excluded by definition, not by discretion. The system physically cannot and will not abstract this data.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Yeah.
It's the tension between the final 2 safeguards. Safeguard number 3 is customer review.
Right, the 30-day window.
Yeah, operators get a 30-day window to inspect any candidate learnings before they are published to the generalized network. So if you are running a plant, you actually have the right to look at what the AI mathematically learned from your facility.
And you can withhold specific items if you feel the abstraction still reveals too much.
Right, which on its face sounds like a giant loophole for a company trying to hide a massive operational mistake.
It totally does.
I mean, if I just had a near-miss explosion because my crew was cutting corners to save time, and the AI flags that behavioral pattern, my immediate instinct as a plant manager is going to be to use that 30-day window to smash the delete button.
Right, so your competitors and regulators don't find out.
Exactly.
But that brings us to safeguard number 4. What's fascinating here is how this specific safeguard closes that exact loophole. They call it the safety disclosure duty.
The safety disclosure duty, how does that work?
The standard states that if EON identifies a pattern with life safety implications, both parties are legally and contractually obligated to allow its disclosure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Neither the customer nor EON is allowed to suppress it. Your 30-day veto power is entirely revoked if human lives are at risk.
So it's essentially an automated version of a whistleblower system,
Yes.
but built into the architecture of the code itself.
Exactly.
How is that actually enforced, though? I mean, if I'm that plant manager and it's day 29, what physically stops me from withholding it?
It is enforced through the binding terms of service required to use the EIN platform. By adopting the software, the enterprise agrees that patterns flagged with a life safety severity code bypass the discretionary review queue entirely.
So the system just overrides the humans.
Pretty much. The system is architected so that local administrators cannot override a critical safety flag.
Wow.
If a procedure is mathematically proven to cause a fatal blowout, the platform prioritizes the global distribution of that warning over the local administrator's comfort.
That is wild. By placing the safety disclosure duty above the customer review window, EON is making a definitive moral and operational choice here.
They absolutely are.
They are prioritizing human life over corporate PR. Like, if a company tries to bury a critical safety failure to protect their stock price, this standard actively prevents that cover-up.
It mandates that a life-saving lesson cannot be proprietary.
Right, which forces absolute accountability.
It does. But, it also introduces a massive business challenge.
Which brings us to the ultimate question for any business considering adopting this technology. Once all this data is scrubbed and the 30-day windows pass and the safeguards do their job,
Right.
what is the actual reward for an operator who agrees to this framework?
Right. What's in it for them?
Yeah. If you are an executive, why share your learnings at all, even the de-identified ones, when you could just use an internal closed-loop AI?
Because a closed-loop AI will eventually hit a ceiling.
Yeah.
The reward here is the network effect, and this is really where EON's business model scales beautifully.
How so?
It's entirely based on royalty-free reciprocity.
Okay, royalty-free reciprocity. The press release states that participating operators get perpetual royalty-free access to the entire generalized corpus of learnings, right?
Yes, and that's not just across their own specific industry.
Right, it's across all of EON's served sectors, which currently includes what? Mining, aerospace maintenance, and clinical training.
Yeah. The pitch is that everyone who signs on is a, quote, net receiver from the first day.
A net receiver.
Think about the math of that proposition. You contribute your tiny fraction of de-identified abstracted mistakes, and in return, you get the combined safety wisdom of the entire global industrial sector.
And it improves continuously. With conventional enterprise software, you buy version 1.0, it's static, and you wait 2 years to pay an upgrade fee for version 2.0.
Right, the old model.
But with this system, a participating operator's software gets smarter every single time a worker halfway across the globe interacts with a similar machine, and at no additional cost.
There's actually another quote from Dan Lajerskar here that just nails why this cross-industry pollination is so vital.
What's the quote?
He says, a failure mode discovered on a pump in a refinery is the same failure mode on that pump in a mine. Keeping that knowledge locked inside one company doesn't protect anybody. It just means the next crew learns it the hard way.
Which is a tragedy, really. But if you're sitting there running a manufacturing plant, your first thought is naturally going to be, well, that's great in theory, but how does an abstracted mathematical failure mode from a mine actually stop my worker from making a mistake in real life?
Yeah, how does it translate to the real world? That is where we have to look at the specific tools EON has built. They aren't just hoarding this knowledge in a database somewhere.
Right, they have a platform called the Intelligence Flywheel.
Exactly. This isn't just a theoretical white paper they threw together. They are building on a 25-year foundation of immersive learning technology deployed in over 80 countries.
Wow, 25 years. And the release mentions specific products within that flywheel. There's Genesis, Field IQ, and Assess IQ. Let's break down how those actually deploy this generalized data out to the field.
Sure. Let's trace a generalized learning through that whole flywheel.
Okay, let's do it.
Say the AI identifies a new generalized failure pattern regarding a specific pump. Maybe it mathematically proves that if a technician skips a specific diagnostic check, the pump fails 3 weeks later.
Okay, so with our pattern.
Right. That pattern immediately updates Genesis, which is EON's AI engine for creating 3D immersive simulations.
So it updates the training automatically.
Yes, Genesis automatically alters the digital training simulation for that pump to emphasize that critical diagnostic check.
Wow. So the training material itself is rewriting its own curriculum based on global, real-world mistakes.
Exactly. Then that flows into the next tool, Field IQ.
Which does what?
Field IQ provides real-time spatial guidance for workers on the job, usually through mobile devices or augmented reality.
Oh, cool.
So because the global model flagged this failure pattern, Field IQ will now automatically prompt a worker in a refinery to verify that specific diagnostic check before they are even allowed to proceed to the next step of the physical maintenance procedure.
So it's actively intervening. It's taking a de-identified mistake from a mine in Australia, turning it into a mathematical rule, and using that rule to stop a technician in a refinery in Texas from making the exact same mistake in real time.
Exactly. And finally, it feeds into the third tool, Assess IQ, which verifies competency.
Okay, so testing them.
Right. It tests the workforce against these constantly evolving global standards to ensure that the institutional knowledge is actually being absorbed rather than just, resting in a manual on a dusty shelf somewhere.
So they have the infrastructure to actually distribute these life-saving patterns the moment they are verified.
They do. And, they aren't inventing this concept of shared anonymous safety data from scratch either.
No.
No, they're basically taking proven practices from other high-stakes industries and digitizing them into an AI framework.
Like what industries?
Well, the standard explicitly notes it is modeled on established systems, like the confidential reporting protocols used in commercial aviation.
Oh, like when pilots report near misses.
Exactly. In aviation, if a pilot makes a procedural mistake, they can report it anonymously.
Right.
The aviation authority analyzes the data to fix the systemic issue.
Right.
So maybe it's a confusing dial, or a flawed checklist. And they do this without the pilot fearing they'll be fired.
The entire aviation industry gets safer because the identity of the pilot is stripped away, but the mechanics of the error are shared globally.
Yes, exactly.
It's the exact same principle as process safety collaboration in chemical manufacturing or incident data sharing among oil and gas operators.
Those industries already know that keeping safety data a secret gets people killed.
Yeah.
EON is simply providing the technological architecture to automate and scale that sharing through artificial intelligence without risking a company's competitive advantage.
So what does this all mean? Why did we spend this deep dive tearing apart the architecture of a data rights standard?
Good question.
Because whether you work in heavy industry or you build enterprise software or you are just a person who cares deeply about your own digital footprint, EON AI Ventures is proving something incredibly important here.
They really are.
They are proving that the future of artificial intelligence does not have to rely on reckless data extraction. We don't have to accept the giant vacuum cleaner model as the only way forward.
No, we don't.
You can have continuous, compounding AI improvement, AI that gets smarter every single day and actively saves lives, while still maintaining absolute, uncompromising data sovereignty. The customer can keep the story, while the world benefits from the pattern.
It fundamentally changes the paradigm of how we develop large-scale AI models. We're moving away from an era of scraping everything toward an era of structured, federated learning.
Yeah.
And it leaves me with a thought I'd love for you to consider long after we wrap up today.
What's that?
If this pattern versus story model works so effectively for heavy industry, for physical safety, and for highly paranoid corporate giants, could this be the exact blueprint we need to solve the AI privacy crisis in every other field?
Oh, wow. That's a great point.
Right. Imagine an AI that learns from our collective medical records to cure diseases, or an AI that analyzes white-collar workflows to eliminate busy work, without ever knowing our names, our incomes, or our personal stories.
It's entirely possible.
If we can build an architecture that protects the secrets of a multi-billion-dollar refinery while still making the global industry safer, why can't we demand that same architecture for ourselves?
Think about the X-ray analogy from earlier. We don't need the diagnostic AI to know who broke their arm or how much money they make or what street they live on.
Exactly.
We just need it to recognize the jagged white line so the next person heals faster. It's a profound shift in how we think about the digital footprint we leave behind and who ultimately benefits from our mistakes. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the EON Data Rights Standard. Keep asking the hard questions about your data, and we will see you next time.
Take care.